So, statistically speaking, 95% of the time you lose an object, it is hiding within 36 inches of where you last saw it.
Wow, only 36 inches.
Right, just 36 inches. I mean, let that sink in for a second. That is basically arm's reach.
Yeah, that's wild when you actually think about it.
It really is. Yet human nature dictates a completely different response. Like, when we can't find our keys or, our phone, we don't calmly search a 3-foot radius.
Oh, absolutely not. Total panic mode.
Exactly. We immediately assume the item has just poof, vanished into the ether. We tear the entire house apart. We dig through the laundry hamper. We retrace our steps to a coffee shop we visited 3 days ago.
Right, we just assume the worst case scenario right out of the gate.
Always. We completely bypass the immediate reality right in front of us to, search the far extremes. Anyway, welcome to today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited for this one.
Me too. Because today, for you listening, we are exploring this really fascinating collection of notes, research, and philosophy from a document simply called Within Arm's Reach.
It's such a rich source text.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how to stop that frantic, exhausting wandering we all do. We are going to look at how to build a truly purposeful life by realizing that the answers we seek, the profound ones about our careers, our identities, our next steps, they aren't hiding in some far-off exotic territory.
Right? They're not in another time zone.
Exactly. They're sitting right there in that 36-inch radius, just waiting for us to actually notice them.
What's fascinating here is how quickly Kevin Kelly's practical, everyday advice about, finding a misplaced wallet transforms into this sweeping philosophical metaphor for the human condition.
Oh, totally. It scales up so fast.
It does, because if you sit with that 36-inch rule long enough, you realize it perfectly describes our modern existential panic.
Yeah, that feeling of just being completely adrift.
Right. We spend so much of our time scanning the distant horizon, convinced that the answers about who we are or how we are meant to live our lives are hiding in a different city or a different job title or, I don't know, a completely different social circle.
Like we have to uproot our whole lives just to find ourselves.
Exactly. We expand the search radius to the absolute maximum because, well, we believe profound answers must require a profound journey.
It has to be hard, right?
That's the assumption. But the core argument we're unpacking today is that the raw materials for a deeply meaningful life are actually already folded into the immediate space of our daily routines.
I mean, that reframing sounds incredibly poetic, but let's deal with the reality of how people actually feel.
Fair enough.
Because if the answers are literally right here, sitting next to us on the couch, why do we constantly feel like we were just wandering aimlessly?
That's the big question.
Right. And the author of these notes addresses that feeling by bringing in this amazing analogy from the writer Stephen Pressfield, who points us toward the structure of Shakespeare's Hamlet.
Oh, this part of the document is brilliant.
It really is. So think about the beginning of that play. Everything that happens before the ghost of Hamlet's father appears on the castle battlements is purely prologue.
Right, it's just scene setting.
Exactly. Hamlet is wandering the halls. He's moody. He's dressed in black. He's grieving. But he lacks an actual vector. He has no real direction.
Just sort of pacing around the castle.
Yes. But then the ghost appears, reveals the murder, and delivers a very specific command. Remember me. And Pressfield calls this the inciting incident.
The spark that lights the whole thing up.
Precisely. In that exact fraction of a second, Hamlet acquires his intention. The aimless wandering instantly stops. The narrative truly begins, and that singular intention propels him all the way to the final curtain.
And Pressfield's lesson here is that everything in our lives, up until the moment we acquire our own specific intention, is just setup.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I really have to push back on Pressfield's framing here.
Go for it.
Because if you are listening to this right now and you feel like you haven't found your personal ghost yet, you haven't stumbled across that grand, burning intention for your career or your life, doesn't labeling this phase as mere setup make your current life feel like a massive waste of time?
That is a very valid fear.
Right. Like, how do you know the difference between building necessary architecture and just procrastinating out of fear? I can easily see someone using the excuse of waiting for my ghost to just hide from making difficult choices.
And that is the exact tension this concept creates. It is a crucial distinction to make. Waiting for your intention is not about sitting passively in a waiting room, just flipping through magazines until destiny calls your name.
Okay, so what does it look like then?
Well, the synthesis in these notes explicitly connects this waiting period to a piece of quiet counsel from a journal entry which says, to trust the timing of everything.
Trust the timing. That's hard to do.
It is incredibly hard. But trusting the timing requires active patience. You are exploring your immediate radius. You are turning on your radar. So you aren't just checked out.
Exactly. The difference between hiding and building architecture is the deliberate acquisition of skills and experiences that you don't even realize you'll need yet.
Oh, that makes sense. Like picking up tools for a toolbox you haven't built yet.
Yes. You might take a job that seems slightly off your ideal path, or learn a new software program, or, navigate a really difficult relationship. You are building the physical and emotional stage.
You're prepping the venue.
Right. The ghost will eventually speak, but you have to be awake, skilled, and attentive to your current 36-inch reality to actually do something about it when that inciting incident finally arrives.
I love that. You are building the stage so you have somewhere to stand when the lights finally come up.
Exactly.
But let's say the lights do come up. The ghost speaks. You get the inciting incident, and your intention is suddenly crystal clear. You know exactly what you want to write, or build, or change. Are you done?
Definitely not. Right. The obvious answer is no. I mean, Hamlet knew exactly what he was supposed to do the second that ghost vanished, yet the play still takes 5 agonizingly long, complicated acts to resolve.
It's a long gap between the idea and the finale.
A massive gap. The gap between knowing your intention and actually executing it is huge, and according to the sources, the only way to cross that gap is through systems.
Because intention provides the spark, but systems are the engine that sustains the combustion.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and this is where the document integrates Seth Godin's concept of selling selfish. Godin looks at the cold reality of human biology and psychology.
Which is not always flattering.
No, it's really not. We are fundamentally driven by self-interest, fear, and the desire for immediate gratification. I mean, the evolutionary wiring in our brains just wants the highest calorie reward for the lowest possible effort right this very second.
Oh, absolutely. The impulse to skip the gym or eat the entire cake or blow off a major project to scroll on our phones, that is a temptation we battle every single morning.
Right, and Godin asks a really pointed question here. Given that biological reality, why haven't we all just evolved into selfish toddlers?
It's a fair question.
Why aren't we constantly burning down our own long-term futures for whatever immediate satisfaction we crave today?
And the answer is systems, right?
Exactly. The mechanism that prevents those selfish impulses from winning is the system. Selling selfish is Godin's way of explaining how we align a person's immediate selfish desires with long-term communal good.
So the system kind of tricks us into doing the right thing.
Sort of, yeah. Systems enforce cultural norms. They provide immediate micro-rewards for behaviors that benefit our future selves and our communities.
Okay, that makes sense.
And Godin uses this to dismantle the very romantic, very American myth of the lone cowboy, the rugged individualist who supposedly achieves greatness out on the plains with nothing but a horse and pure willpower.
We love that myth.
We do, but it's a terrible strategy for a meaningful life. True strategy requires us to build and submit to systems that expand our capabilities. We need community.
Right, we can't do it alone.
And the document reinforces this with a great quote from Simon Sinek, who says, "Changing the world takes more than any one person knows, but not more than we know together."
So what does this all mean for the listener who is just trying to apply it to their Tuesday morning?
Let's ground it.
Yeah, because we often hear the word systems and immediately picture cold corporate bureaucracy. We think of spreadsheets, red tape, and, soul-crushing rules.
Cubicles and performance reviews.
Exactly. But practically speaking, systems are really just like the bowling lane bumpers for our own brains.
Oh, I like that visual.
Right. When you have a powerful burst of intention, let's say you want to be a more present parent or you want to start a new company, that intention is the heavy bowling ball. You roll it down the lane with a ton of force.
But it's heavy and it veers off course.
Yes. Without systems, that ball is going to inevitably gutter ball right into mere impulse the moment you get tired or stressed. The systems are the daily habits, the community check-ins, the shared calendars, the external commitments.
They physically bounce your intention back into the center of the lane so it can actually hit the pins.
Exactly. They keep you out of the gutter.
That visual captures the protective nature of systems perfectly. They protect our intention from our own worst impulses. And there is an Arab proverb cited in the notes that really sharpens this underlying mechanism even further.
Oh, the one about anger.
Yes. The best answer comes from the person who is not angry.
That is so true.
Think about what a well-functioning system actually does to the human mind. It removes the heat of the moment.
It takes the emotion out of the decision.
Exactly. It removes the cognitive load of deciding what to do when your prefrontal cortex is completely compromised by exhaustion or frustration or anger.
Because we've all sent that angry email we immediately regretted.
Oh, 100%. But when you rely on a system, you are relying on the logical structure you built when you were calm and clear-headed. And that is how a solitary burst of intention scales into an entire lifetime of execution.
It takes the pressure off the individual moment. You don't have to be a genius every day. You just have to follow the system you designed when you are at your best.
That's the beauty of it.
And this internal structuring brings us to the literal architecture of a purposeful life. The document synthesizes all of this into the central visual framework.
The diagram is really helpful.
It is. So if intention sits directly in the center as the core, it cannot survive in a vacuum. It requires an ecosystem. From above, it is fed by attitude.
Which is huge.
Right. And the notes include a wonderful quote from the author Roald Dahl here, who wrote that if you have good thoughts, they will shine out of your face like sunbeams.
Such a classic quote.
It's perfect. Your baseline internal weather really matters. But then, intention is supported on the flanks by systems and mastery, and it is held up from below by practice, timing, and connection.
The real strength of that framework is its interdependence. These are not isolated, a la carte self-help concepts that you can just pick and choose from.
You can't just order the intention without a sight of systems.
Exactly. If you remove any single node, the entire structure weakens. You can possess a burning intention and a super sunny attitude, but if you refuse to build systems, you will just burn out in an open field, totally exhausted by decision fatigue.
And vice versa, right?
Yes, conversely, if you work a rigid system perfectly, but you never focus on the friction of true mastery and practice, your growth will just plateau almost immediately.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We are not just talking about metaphorical structures or philosophical concepts anymore. We are talking about literal biological changes taking place inside your skull.
The neuroscience section,
Yeah.
yes.
The notes dive into the intersection of author Robert Greene's work on mastery and the neuroscience of V.S. Ramachandran. They look at the physical mechanism of what actually happens in the brain when you engage in deep practice.
It's physically demanding.
It really is. When you first start learning a complex new skill, like driving a manual transmission or learning to play the cello or speaking a new language, your prefrontal cortex is essentially screaming. Total overload. That is the conscious command center of your brain, and it is frantically firing, burning massive amounts of metabolic energy, just trying to process all this unfamiliar sensory input and motor commands.
And the cognitive load is staggering, which is exactly why learning a new skill feels so physically and emotionally draining. You are recruiting this enormous, inefficient population of neurons just to handle the basic mechanics of the task.
You feel exhausted after 10 minutes.
Exactly. But as you repeat the skill, a biological process called myelination occurs. The neural pathways associated with that specific action are wrapped in myelin, which is a fatty substance that acts a lot like insulation on a copper wire.
Okay, so it streamlines the connection.
Precisely. This insulation allows the electrical signals to travel up to 100 times faster. And as this pathway strengthens, the brain actually shifts the processing load.
It moves it somewhere else.
Yeah, it moves the task away from the conscious, energy-hungry prefrontal cortex and delegates it downward to older, deeper structures like the basal ganglia and the motor cortex.
Wow. And this is the biological reason you can, jump on a bicycle 20 years after you last rode one and just pedal away without consciously calculating the physics of gravity or momentum or balance.
Your body just remembers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let me offer a comparison here. So I like to think of the human brain as essentially acting like a highly stressed out startup founder.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right. Because at the very beginning of the company, the founder, which is your prefrontal cortex, has to do absolutely everything.
He's sweeping the floors, doing the taxes.
Exactly. They are doing the accounting, pitching the clients, taking out the trash. It is total chaos. But through relentless practice and systemization, the founder finally starts hiring middle management.
They delegate.
Yes, they delegate the balancing of the bicycle to the basal ganglia department. They delegate the muscle memory of the guitar chords to the motor cortex department. And eventually, the founder is freed up to just sit in a quiet, uncluttered office and tackle the next big overarching challenge.
That perfectly contextualizes one of the most unexpected inclusions in this document, actually.
The basketball player.
Yes. A quote from the professional basketball player Bam Adebayo. So, he frequently uses a famous military adage, Proper prior planning prevents piss-poor performance.
Which is a mouthful on its own.
It is. But then he expands it into this massive cascading alliteration, he says. Progressive programming, planting power, poise, and prediction.
I mean, most people would stumble trying to read that phrase out loud slowly, let alone fire it off in a casual conversation like he does.
Which is exactly why it is relevant to the neuroscience of mastery. Adebayo is not just demonstrating a clever vocabulary here. That linguistic cascade is physical evidence of a brain that has completely myelinated a pathway.
The myelin insulation is working.
Over time. Conscious thought, that prefrontal startup founder, is entirely too slow to process those phonetic sounds sequentially in real time. You would stutter or completely lose your place.
Right, your conscious brain would trip over the P's.
Exactly. You can only produce a rhythmic, percussive torrent of language like that if you have drilled it so heavily that the motor function of speech has been completely delegated to the deeper layers of the brain.
So the alliteration itself is proof of the quiet mind. The conscious mind isn't micromanaging the mouth anymore. It just sets the intention and lets the automated systems run.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly explains Robert Greene's assertion that the more skills you learn, the richer the landscape of the brain actually becomes.
It's an expanding map.
Right. Mastery is never a final destination. It is a compounding biological process. Every single skill you delegate to your neurological middle management becomes permanent infrastructure.
It's neural real estate.
Yes, neural real estate that acts as the secure foundation for the next, more complex level of learning.
So if the brain delegates all these tasks down and your external systems are running smoothly and your daily attitude is dialed in, the end result isn't actually an increase in mental activity.
No, not at all.
Paradoxically, the ultimate destination of all this effort is silence. The document points to the ultimate goal being the quiet mind.
The quiet mind is what that prefrontal cortex looks like once the noise of uncertainty and mechanical processing has been finally delegated away. It is still, it's untroubled, and it's highly observant.
I love the idea of an untroubled mind.
Don't we all? And the document curates several distinct voices to illustrate this state. Bruce Lee's martial arts philosophy is front and center here. He said, "Have no way as way, have no limitation as limitation."
Which sounds like a bit of a riddle at first.
It does, but it is the literal description of a highly myelinated brain. You aren't forcing a rigid, preconceived style onto a situation. Your foundational skills are so thoroughly automated that your conscious mind is entirely free to adapt to whatever unique challenge is standing right in front of you.
We see this across all disciplines, too. There is wisdom included here from Terry Laughlin, who developed the total immersion methodology for swimming.
Oh, that's right.
His core tenet was that good instruction should always seem simple, and it should make immediate intuitive sense. I mean, when you encounter someone who operates with a truly quiet mind, a master of their craft, they never try to drown you in complex jargon just to prove how smart they are.
They don't need to overcompensate.
Exactly. They make the complex look completely effortless.
Because true mastery does not look like frantic, sweaty complexity. It looks like calm, simple clarity.
Beautifully said.
But where this document becomes truly profound, I think, is how it transitions the quiet mind from just a solitary personal state of high performance into a framework for how we actually interact with society.
Right, taking it from the individual to the group.
Exactly. The notes introduce a quote from the 19th century thinker Robert Greene Ingersoll regarding the concept of tolerance. Ingersoll defines tolerance as giving to every other human being every right you claim for yourself.
Now, how does a political or social concept like tolerance connect back to the neurological state of a quiet mind?
Yeah.
Like, what is the underlying mechanism linking those two ideas?
It fundamentally comes down to internal security versus internal panic.
Okay, say more about that.
Well, when we are insecure or anxious or operating without those foundational systems we talked about, when our prefrontal cortex is totally overwhelmed by the chaos of just trying to survive the day, our biological reflex is to view the outside world as a threat.
Survival mode.
Exactly. We hoard rights and resources and privileges for ourselves and our immediate group, and we deny them to anyone who looks or acts differently.
Because we feel like there isn't enough to go around.
Right. But when your mind is truly quiet, supported by that deep infrastructure of intention, mastery, and community systems, that threat response actually powers down.
You aren't operating from fear anymore.
Exactly. You possess the internal security required to extend generosity without anxiety. Genuine tolerance is the social expression of the quiet mind. You can afford to grant others the same rights you enjoy because you are no longer operating from that baseline of panic.
You are no longer the selfish toddler Seth Godin described earlier. Burning down the village just to keep yourself warm.
You actually have the capacity to care for the village now.
That is so powerful. And that mechanism explains another really fascinating inclusion in this section. A quote from the pioneering family therapist Virginia Satir.
The quote about hugging.
Yes, she wrote extensively about the psychological power of hugging. She noted that a hug is a profound form of communication because it conveys all the things you simply do not have the words for.
Which is such a lovely thought.
It is. But honestly, in a document dissecting Shakespearean plot structure, neuroplasticity, and systemic architecture, a quote about hugging might seem completely out of left field.
It seems like a tonal shift, for sure.
Right. But through the lens of the quiet mind, it makes absolute sense. At the highest echelons of mastery and human connection, the most important truths aren't shouted across a crowded room. They do not require 1,000 words of complex defensive explanation.
They are quietly transmitted through simple presence. And that transmission of presence is only possible when the internal noise is finally settled. A hug requires you to be entirely in the physical space of the present moment, literally within arm's reach of another person.
Which brings our deep dive perfectly full circle, right back to where we started.
Back to the 36 inches.
Back to Kevin Kelly and that 36-inch radius. When we step back and view this entire interconnected structure, from the initial scene setting of Hamlet to the building of behavioral systems, to the myelination of the brain's pathways, to the social expression of deep tolerance, Kelly's rule really transcends just practical advice for finding a lost wallet.
It becomes a blueprint.
It becomes a comprehensive theory of everything. The life you are looking for, the profound purpose you are trying to uncover, is not hidden in a distant time zone you haven't managed to travel to yet.
It's not out there.
It is not locked behind a different career path you abandoned 10 years ago. It is residing right there in your near radius.
And the document concludes by anchoring this reality with a great German proverb. There is no one luckier than he who thinks himself so.
That's a great proverb.
Isn't it? The luckiest, most purposeful people in the world are not the ones who had a magical, extraordinary destiny drop out of the sky into their laps while they were just staring at the horizon.
No, they made it happen locally.
Exactly. They are simply the ones who learned to stop scanning the distance. They focused their attention strictly within arm's reach. They trusted the timing of their lives. And they realized that the raw materials required to build the exact life they wanted were sitting there all along, just waiting to be assembled.
The ingredients are already in your pockets. You just have to apply the intention and the systems to forge them together. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
We have traveled from the sprawling battlements of Hamlet's castle all the way down to the microscopic firing of your motor cortex. But as you step away from this discussion and back into the reality of your day, we want to leave you with one final, provocative question to mull over. Let's hear it.
If the neuroscience, the philosophers, and the ancient proverbs all point to the biological and practical truth that the foundational pieces of what you need are already sitting within arm's reach, what is the one thing in your life right now that you are actively ignoring, simply because it doesn't look like the dramatic theatrical ghost you're expecting?
That's a powerful question.
Look closely at your immediate 46-inch radius today. The answer you've been frantically searching for might just be waiting for you to finally notice it.